We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The future isn't looking bright for President Joe Biden and his congressional colleagues. With the primary season over, it's all about waiting for the actual election to see just how hobbled the Build Back Better agenda really is. As Bill Clinton once noted, it's just one small step from legacy to lame duck. Welcome back to the Liberty Nation Radio Show, here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we talk the legislative lockdown for Joe Biden, the latest economic news and its impact on regular Americans, and the paradox of incarceration and lawlessness. I'd like to say a special thank you to our listeners in Evergreen, Alabama on WNWF 1470 AM and WPNS on 1140 AM. Thanks for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and ultimately your fondness for the great American Constitution. Thanks for being here, and let's get started. The midterm primaries are all done, and there's nothing left to do but wait for November 8th. But what will be the shape of Congress in this upcoming term? And have we learned any lessons from the tumultuous primary season? Well, diving into the numbers and applying some historical perspective for us is longtime host of this here Liberty Nation radio show and political analyst, Mr. Tim Donner. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
So, Tim, simple question first. In terms of the historic perspective on primary seasons, what narratives and what lessons stand out to you from what we've just experienced?
Well, some of this is historic and some of it is contemporary in the sense that Trumpism has been dominant on the Republican side. Trump himself has, of course, become a continued focus. He cannot get out of that camera lens, whether it be the Democrats trying to put him there because they think they can beat him, or the Republicans putting him there because they think he can beat the Democrats. It's hard to tell because the Trump factor is like nothing we've ever seen before. But his philosophy of government, so to speak, his MAGA, extreme MAGA, ultra MAGA, whatever you want to call it, America First policies have carried the day in Republican primaries. Whereas on the Democratic side, it's been pretty much the theme that Republicans are extreme, that they're dangerous, that they're a threat to the constitutional republic, which shows desperation, really, on the Democrat side when the president of the United States is willing to demonize 74 million voters. The last time that happened was, oh, wait, it never happened before. Okay, so the polling is all over the place, but as you so brilliantly penned on LibertyNation.com, polling can be extremely inaccurate. And so I'll give you an example. In 2010, the Republicans were down 2 points in the generic ballot, and they won 64 seats in the House. And as you point out, so many of Biden's margins in 2020 were much smaller than predicted. So, it's still got to be the Republicans to lose. It's a matter of whether Republicans can believe inflation, crime, and the border threats of those nature are greater than the threats of climate change and unlimited abortion on demand by constitutional right, which the left believes will get people.
That really does seem to be the two narratives, though, doesn't it? The two conflicting narratives that are coming through. One, that the primary season here was a referendum on Donald Trump and America First, and the other that it's a referendum on the Supreme Court's decision to send Roe v. Wade, basically send abortion decisions back to the states, which is what a lot of the Democrats were campaigning on. And sitting Democrats continue to campaign on for general numbers bolstering. Which, if either, do you think is closer to the truth?
Well, I don't think either one of them is true. And I think for the Democrats, if they really believed that they could win on abortion and climate change and paying off student loans on the taxpayer dole was going to be enough to win and to overcome the record that began really plunging. Biden's approval began plunging with Afghanistan, and he's finally started to turn it around a year later, but only into the low 40s. If those things, climate change, abortion, student loan payoffs, all of that was enough, Joe Biden would not be out there essentially calling anyone who voted against him a threat to democracy. Clearly, they believe they must make this not a referendum on Biden, which is what the Republicans want, but frankly, a referendum on Trump, even though he's not on the ballot, by declaring anyone that voted for him as a semi-fascist. So it's more a matter of which narrative holds that this is a referendum on Biden or a referendum on Trump and Trumpism.
Just jumping back, slightly off topic, but jumping back to something you said earlier here, Tim, about how Trump was, he's like an X factor that hasn't been taken into any political equations through recent history. And I'm wondering, I'm sure you're familiar with the term a dead cat bounce in economics. And the idea popped into my head here that what we saw in 2015, 2016 was an upswelling of, let's call it right-wing populism across the world. We saw it with Donald Trump. We saw it with Brexit. We saw it with Viktor Orban in Hungary. But then all of a sudden, you've had several years of the left very much pushing back on this populism narrative, the populism platform. But recent days, what have we seen? We've seen Sweden has just got rid of its left-leaning coalition and brought in a coalition headed by populist nationalists in Sweden, of all places. So I'm wondering if the pushback to Trumpism and to Brexit, if that wasn't a bit of a dead cat bounce. What do you think?
Well, I think that the reaction to Trump and Trumpism has been pretty much completed, I should probably say, because there's nothing else about him that anybody can find that is going to strengthen the Democrats' case against him. They've already called him a traitor. They have called him a threat to democracy. They've called him an authoritarian. They've called him a fascist before they called all of his supporters semi-fascist. So I think that the left, Mark, actually gets into trouble when they actually institute their policies and people see what that means to the economy, to taxes, to work incentives. We can see it now.
All right, let's get back to the 2023 Congress, if we may, Tim. What do you think are the important Senate races to watch?
Well, I think that the first thing Republicans, from a Republican perspective, that they have to do in trying to win the one net seat they win to take control of the Senate is to hold the seats they already hold, that they already have.
Yeah, that's 4
in
contests
Pennsylvania.
there, I think, yeah.
That's 4. Well, in Pennsylvania, that's really up for grabs because Dr. Oz has proven to be a weak candidate, an out-of-state guy, and an elitist. But it's starting to swing back the other way because people are realizing that his opponent, John Fetterman, who had a stroke right before his primary victory, is definitely incapacitated to some degree and hiding. So that race is pretty fluid at this point. In Wisconsin, Ron Johnson has to hold a seat. He's now finally in the lead after trailing for most of the time. North Carolina looks like the Republicans will hold it, though it's close. In Ohio, J.D. Vance, the Republican, looks pretty strong. Now, the 3 seats that they have the best chance of taking away are in Georgia, where Herschel Walker made a bevy of rookie mistakes, but has recovered and taken the lead in most polls, though it's really on a knife's edge. Nevada, Republicans have a strong candidate to try and take that seat back in Adam Laxalt. And in New Hampshire, Trump has just won the primary there and takes on Maggie Hassan, the Democrat. That is another toss-up. So it's pretty fluid. There's about 8 to 10 races that will decide whether the Democrats can maintain their 50-50 hold with Kamala Harris breaking the tie.
And we'll be right back after this short break with longtime host of this here Liberty Nation radio show, Tim Donner, discussing whether Joe Biden will be a legislative lame duck. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left-Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five.